When it comes to Superman's rogues gallery, I kind of segment it. I'm like, don't touch these guys. They are perfect as is. Luthor, Brainiac, Zod. There are these characters that are just like, those are cream of the crop characters. Just play the ball where it lies. Try to come up with interesting stories for them, but don't change a hair on Luthor's bald head. He's perfect. And then there's ones where I go, I want to take this character and show you why I think they're cool. And then there are characters where I go, I want to take this character and reinvent them. How do I take this character and make this a character for now? How do I take this character that you might think is a joke and turn them into, oh my God, that is the most messed up thing I've ever heard of. So like, I think Toyman is cool as is when you see like the Paul Dini, Bruce Timm version with that creepy doll head and just using boom, perfect. Love them. Like I love a version of some guy. With the prankster, I'm going to wait till I have some issues under me, because I think if you see prankster in a solicit, it'll be poison. So I want people to go, this is the feel, this is the vibe I get when I read Superman Unlimited. I trust this book. I want to read this book every month. And then once I have your faith, go, and here's my prankster story, because I know what to do with the prankster. I've been doing all these cons, and the most recent one, Frank Miller was there, and we were hanging out at the airport, and I never got to hang out with Frank Miller. And I listened to him tell stories and talk about the industry, and we talked about like what he feels about Superman, because you're writing Superman, you get a chance to talk to Frank Miller, Dark Knight Returns, and then at one point I go, I got this weird take on the prankster, and I told him my take on the prankster, and Frank Miller snorted and laughed. So like it's good.
Oh damn.
I can't wait to get, but I'm not going to do it until you have faith.
I'm so pumped. Well, yeah. Welcome to Gatecrashers, a podcast dedicated to kicking open the door to your next favorite thing. Our mission, our creed, and our code is this: to make all things more approachable and accessible to everyone. We want you to find a universe that you'll fall in love with. I could not be more excited about today's conversation. The last time we spoke with this writer, it was a 2-hour deep dive into what was, at that time, a 10-year-long run of Spider-Man, which ended up being a bit longer after we spoke. But this time, we get to talk about the original superhero, one of my personal favorites, Superman. I am joined by the writer of the upcoming series, Superman Unlimited, which will be on shelves on May 21st, the one and only Dan Slott.
Thank you so much for having me. This is fun. This is I'm a stranger in a strange land.
You are.
There were times where like I broke in at Marvel doing kiddie books, and then DC hired me. They stole me away to do their kiddie books, and I could not get out of this kiddie book hell where I could do. They would give me all the work I could possibly ask for, with Scooby-Doo and Looney Tunes and Dexter's Lab and Cow and Chicken and you name it. They would. I could get anything through Warner Brothers and Cartoon Network and Hanna-Barbera. Anything. If my name was on it and they liked the pitch, even if it broke cardinal rules that you weren't supposed to do with the characters, they went, "Oh, we trust him to do it right," and they would just approve it. So I had all these. There was a point where like they had all these guys working on the kiddie books, and I would have all these springboards that were approved that I could just write. And I just would get, I'm like, I don't want to do kiddie books anymore. And there was one point where it was the stupidest thing I ever said to an editor. They had a ceiling on how much they could pay you working on the kid book line. And they had a meeting where they decided, my stuff was flying through without any notes or anything from Cartoon Network or whatnot. Like my stuff was easy, and they liked it. And they went, okay, Dan, we've had a talk, we had a meeting. We could remove that kind of that ceiling for you. And they went like, would you do more work for us if we paid you more money? And I looked this editor in the face and I told her in all sincerity, if you paid me more money, I could afford to do less work for you.
Whoops.
And they just looked at me like, why'd you say that out loud? Like, what is wrong with your brain? But it was the truth. I didn't want to write any more Scooby-Doo and Looney Tunes. But fortunately, over at DC, I made a break, and I got to start working on the Paul Dini, Bruce Timm books, and I started getting to do some Batman adventures, and some really nice big done ones in the Justice League Adventure book. And it was while I was doing that the editor on the current Justice League book, Dan Raspler, said, I read your latest Justice League script. If I close my eyes and I picture this not in the Bruce Timm art style, if I picture this in modern DC style, these are good Justice League stories. What would you like to pitch me things? And that was like my first in the door and in the world of superheroes. Like Marvel let me do stuff like Marvel Comics Presents and The Odd What If, but mainly I was their Ren and Stimpy guy. I was their funny animal guy. And DC, by letting me do those books, they popped me over, and that became, in a weird way, the first big project became Arkham Asylum Living Hell.
Wild to be a first.
Yeah. And once that did really well, the doors were open everywhere. And that's when Marvel, I always had this idea for a She-Hulk pitch. And I heard that Marvel was going to do a new She-Hulk run in one of their tsunami waves. And I said, I got a pitch for that. And you're the Arkham Asylum Living Hell guy. Yeah, what's your She-Hulk pitch? And it's Ally McBeal with muscles. It's not the punching that matters. It's what's it like doing legal cases in a world of superheroes. What kind of cases do you get? Like, can a ghost testify at their own murder trial? That kind of in the fantasy world. And they liked that pitch, and that became the She-Hulk book. And then not that long after, I was in the Marvel retreats. I was invited to come, and I was very helpful in them. And it was out of that I got Avengers Initiative. And after that, they decided to try me out on Spider-Man, and then the rest was history. But once the She-Hulk book developed a nice cult niche, they put me under contract. And contract was great, guaranteed work and health insurance and bells and whistles. And I was like, I'm all in, and I'm in the Marvel universe. So that exclusive went for 20 years, 2 decades. So I haven't been able to play in the DC sandbox since Arkham. Arkham and one arc of a Justice League Classified that I didn't have the time to finish because I was swamped with Marvel work. Those are the two things. And now I get to come back and I get to work on Superman. It's like, it is a dream. He is one of my Mount Rushmore characters.
Yeah.
If you ever got to write these guys, who's on your Mount Rushmore, he's there. So this is very much a dream scenario. Yeah.
That is cool. I know you didn't want to write those books anymore, but as someone who was a child when Ren and Stimpy and Dexter's Lab was on, I would love to read those books. I wish they would republish something like that, because I would love to read early Dan Slott Cow and Chicken.
Oh, there was one Dexter's Lab where I was so effing cocky that I thought it was genius. And when I turned in the plot, and this is Dexter's Lab, I turned in the plot to my editor and I went, here's your plot. Where's my Eisner?
I was like, won that for that.
I was a cocky son of a bitch. And that became a book that issue became something I was so invested in. Like, I thought I'd written this masterpiece script that when it went to Cartoon Network, it went to Tartakovsky. He got to make edits because it was his characters. Mm-hmm. And he thought he thought the script was too rich, like it was too thick a sauce, and that he wanted to open the visuals up more for these like 3-panel, 2-panel pages. And he pulled out the red pen and put like 40% of this thing on the floor. And I had written my Alan Moore Dexter's Lab story.
Your Dexter's Lab Watchman.
And I was furious. I was like, and I didn't have a name to my name. I didn't have don't they know who I am? No, I'm not that punk guy writing Scooby-Doo and Looney Tunes and shit. But this Dexter's Lab was so good. The basic idea is he creates this portal to a higher dimension. And he doesn't know what's going to be on the other side. And he reaches his hand in and he pulls out the comic that he is currently in, the physical copy of Dexter's Lab, the comic, this issue. And then he goes around, since he has the comic, he can fuck with the universe in ways that like no one else can. And he's using it in Dexter's ways. He's reading everyone's thought balloons. So it's like he can read their minds. And he's doing all these tricks because he can go a page ahead, and he's messing with it. But then he decides to flip to the end, and he sees a funeral for Dexter and all his family and friends crying, and he realizes he has tampered with things beyond his ken, and he's just going to ignore it, and he's going to lock it away deep in the lab. But then when you lock anything away deep in the lab, Dee Dee gets it. So now what does Dee Dee do when she has the comic? And she's doing things that Dexter would never think of. She's taking crayons and scribbling out his dialogue and writing in new dialogue. Mm-hmm. I am Dexter. I am a poopy pants. Dexter, why would you say that? I am not saying. You can read the original dialogue underneath. And there's all this stuff like where we're totally messing with comic books as a format, and all the tricks you could do with and all the fun and games of what could you do with this. And it all became an intricate puzzle of how is Dexter going to get around his own death at the end of the comic? Can he defeat death with this comic? And by cutting out 40% of it, you were left with some of the funnier visual gags, but all the heart of the story went away. And I was furious. I was just like so angry. Yeah, it's That's weird. Wild. When your focus zooms in and your whole existence is I am writing this comic, and someone messes with your comic, you kind of need distance. So I was glad I got a lot of that out of my system in the world of the kiddie book side.
Yeah.
Before I came over to the comic, like I got some of my worst demons out. I did a Wile E. Coyote Roadrunner cartoon, the comic, and I was so proud of it. And then an editor wanted one change, and the one change was like infuriating to me. And when I was arguing with the editor about why they needed the one change, their logic for wanting the change annoyed the hell out of me. And it became a thing where I had worked for that editor and written like tons and tons of Looney Tunes for them. And they'd given notes before, and I'd gone with the notes, but this one note was so aggravating. I stopped writing Looney Tunes for them for like a year, and it became like a bitterness, this like vendetta, because you changed my one note in a Wile E. Coyote story. And you're like, I want to go back in time and tell that guy to chill. Just, it's okay. It's fine.
Wile E. Coyote.
Well, the story was you get to see in 3 stages a Wile E. Coyote and Roadrunner like story, a cartoon, where you see all the prep work that goes into it. So he wakes up in the morning. He's got you get to see his Pee-wee's Big Adventure breakfast machine. You get to see his Rube Goldberg machine that's his alarm clock. And this is the way Wile E. Coyote thinks. And part of it starts with a magnifying glass, so when the sun comes up, it lights the thing. It sets in motion this whole thing that is his alarm clock. And then he wakes up all refreshed and feeling like a genius. And then you see him go to Acme Warehouse with his preferred Acme Gold card because he's bought so much shit from them. And you see all the elements he buys, which you now know will all be used in traps. And then you see him set up all the traps, including painting the signs that he will whip out. So on a weird level, he already knows he's going to fail because all the signs have been predetermined. And he's even painting on one giant rock. You can see you can't see the whole thing, but you know what he's painting from the side. He's painting "That's all, folks" on the side of a giant rock. So you get to see everything that's going to happen. And then you see all the gags and they all fail. Okay, now you think the story's over. No, it's the next day. The sun comes up, hits the magnifying glass, but he hasn't replaced the rope from the previous day. So the beam goes all around different ways in the house till it eventually sets his head on fire. He now wakes up screaming, goes running out the door, and all the places, because at one point when you get to see the "That's all, folks" folder, it hits him wrong. You don't get to read it. But the next day he comes out and he's setting up everywhere the trap has been left has now turned into a new form of trap. And it becomes a Rube Goldberg device that completely messes him up to the point where he finally slams into the "That's all" boulder. And that was the story. So it's it was a little Swiss watch, and I was so happy with it. And the editor said, we have to remove the magnifying glass. Yeah, I see the face you're making. Okay. And I was like, but the artist had already started drawing the story. So they'd done the first page with the magnifying glass. The editor was just removing the magnifying glass from the second part of the story. Yeah.
Sure. That doesn't
so we removed it it stays in the beginning, but it's not there at the end. And I'm like, why? And they're like, well, because you already used the magnifying glass. I'm like, yeah, it's the gun on the mantle. We set it up so it can be here for the very end. And they went, yeah, but you did a magnifying glass joke last issue with Foghorn Leghorn and Egghead. And I'm like, yeah, it's a magnifying glass. In the world of Looney Tunes, that's like getting hit with a pie. Yeah. It's a regular thing, like an anvil. Yeah, to me, it feels too similar that 2 months in a row that's now 3 magnifying glass jokes.
It's still funny. How many years later? So
I was furious. And then I was like, okay, can we art correct the beginning of the story? So the magnifying glass isn't there at the beginning, and we'll do something else. No, it's already been drawn. And I'm like apoplectic at this point. And then in the end, she writes in a bit where he looks at all the plans he wrote the day before, and he's so mad that he scratches a match to burn them all, but the match sets his head on fire, which then... But I'm like, it's not the magnifying glass. You see where we're going at. But the difference is...
It's not as good as a bit.
This was a grudge, a vendetta I had for like years. Yeah. I wouldn't work with this person because of one stupid panel. Get over yourself. Yeah. It's fine. But I was looking at all the expressions you were making, and we're on the same page.
Yeah, I get it.
Just let it go, man.
So,
let it go.
Before we get into Superman, you've been on the show before, so I can't ask you my award-winning sandwich question, but being the first time that you and I met was actually outside of comics entirely. We met at a Doctor Who fan signing where at New York, and we just sat next to each other completely by accident and just ended up talking all day. Which Doctor would Superman be the best companion for?
I am going to go with Shudigawa because he's the present Doctor, and Superman should be with whoever's the present Doctor.
Okay, that's a good reason. I like that.
Yeah, but like if it was Kurt Swan era Superman, then he should be with like John Pertwee. If it's this guy, he should be with that guy. John Byrne, he should be with and so on, so on and so on. But he should be.
All right, I like that.
He should track through time.
I really like he should be with whoever is right now. And Shuti is unbelievable. So
could you see him in the phone booth with him going like, babe?
Yeah, the change, like the dress up moments would be incredible. So you said you grew up as a Marvel reader. Why is Superman important to you?
Superman is the first and the best. Superman, I grew up reading Marvel like crazy. My cousin gave me my first physical comics to read, and those were the Fantastic Four Galactus trilogy. Like I started in the Marvel universe, and I knew, but everyone my age, we grew up with Spider-Man 67 in syndication, and Adam West Batman in syndication, and George Reeves Superman, black and whites that you could like watch on TV, and Super Friends on Saturday morning. Trouble alert! Ba, 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 ba. We all have a Ted Knight voice. Meanwhile, in the Hall of Justice. So it's like those are the guys. My DC skews weird because I was reading Superman. I was reading, for some reason, I like Detective more than Batman. But like my gold standards would be Brave and Bold because I got to read Batman and somebody. And then eventually DC Comics Presents for the same reason, Superman. And I always loved the team up books. But I was reading Superman for some weird reason. In like someone would give me a gift, I would get the treasuries, these giant treasury books. And the other thing that got me over to Superman is just like a core thing was before I'd ever read a single comic. I'm a little Jewish boy and I belonged to a temple. And when we'd have our Purim carnival, there was a guy in the community who worked he owned the Bijou Theater, and he had a projector and he had all these old film reels, and he would set up a little film booth at the Purim Carnival where you could step into this room in the temple and watch movies on a screen. And what he kept showing on Purim Carnivals, almost on a loop, were all the Fleischer Supermans. So I waited every year for Purim because I would just like OD on Superman. I thought these cartoons were like the greatest thing ever. And even though he's not flying in them, there are those moments where he's punching a beam of light or he's punching the meteor, and you're just, it's superhero on a different level. Like I'm used to Spider-Man, having to get medicine for Aunt May because she's sick. And Batman very much, even I would watch the Adam West show and I wouldn't get it was supposed to be funny. I would take everything at face value, but he's fighting very earthbound guys. And something about Superman was so much larger than everybody else, that spectacle. You were reading modern day mythology. You were reading a modern day Hercules doing these tasks and labors that were like, so epic that it put Superman on a different plane. There was a book in my school library called Superman from the 30s to the 70s. And this is back in the day where you'd have like the little card that would slip there'd be like a little pouch in the back of the book. The little stamp when you had to return the book by before you get a late fee. My elementary school library had this book. And when you looked at the card, it was just my name repeated over and over and over again. I just kept checking it out and then returning it so I didn't get the late fee and checking it back out again. It just lived with me, this one book. And I would read all these old Superman stories. And it's hard not to love Silver Age Superman. It's hard, like, there's the original Schuster Superman. They're picking up cars, he's beating up people and thugs, and but he's doing it for the working man. But you get to the Silver Age and magic happens. Suddenly Superman, who is like, because that's, I think for a while they were like, DC was just called Superman Comics. They were putting out so many books. You had like a Jimmy Olsen book that outsold almost everything else they did. Same thing for the Lois Lane book. And you had action, you had Superman, it was crazy. So it became because of the time, a lot of those books, what they do is they would come up with the cover first and then tell their guys, go write this story. Like over at Marvel, you had this magic going on where these books were connecting with people. They were books about characters that you felt you knew, guys down the street who suddenly got strange powers. And DC had these characters that were gods, that were mythic, that were perfect teeth and arms akimbo. And if you put them all in a bus and you put that bus in a tunnel, and they're all talking, you don't know who's who.
Yeah.
Unless they say, great row, and I think the way they fought that was they did these books that were anything can happen books. These books that you look at a cover and it's like, Flash I'm being turned into a puppet. And you're like, well, I gotta read that now. And no books exemplified that more than the Superman books. Because here's a character who can do anything, so you have to put him in a situation where anything is happening to him. I have to eat 1 million burgers or I'll die.
Well, those Jimmy Olsen covers, I have always likened it to the Old Testament God versus New Testament God. Old Testament Superman was wild as fuck. Like the stuff he put Jimmy through, where he like, oh, thanks for this birthday present, laser beam eyes,
Heat vision.
Yeah, like, why, Superman? Man? Like, why are you like this?
That was the Superman who would pretend to be a Superman robot so he could spank Lois Lane.
Yeah.
I'm not really Superman. I'm a robot. Smack, smack, smack. Like, what is wrong with him?
Old Testament Superman. He got away with it.
But like, I love the Silver Age and that anything, you pick up the book, anything could happen. I have the head of a lion.
Sure.
I'm shooting rainbows out of my fingers.
Yeah.
And I can promise you, if you read Superman Unlimited, the greatest challenge I have is not doing that every month. I am keeping myself in check and only doing one modern day Silver Age Superman-ish story a year. I'm allowing myself the freedom to once a year go all out nuts and do that kind of story, but hopefully in a modern setting.
Are we going to get a cover like that for each of those?
I'm going to say no because like Paul Kaminsky and I had this idea for our cover issue 4 of Superman Unlimited is that issue for us.
Good. All right.
And we came up with this cover that was nuts. And when Rafael Albuquerque had to draw it, he did a sketch, and then he did another sketch going, if we were treating this like a normal issue, this is like the sketch I would do. And it was so striking and so visual that we're like, yeah, we're going to do the Rafa version because
you win. You're such a
it
good
looks,
artist.
you're an artist, you're a visual master, you know what you're doing. And we're goofy nuts. So, hit pause. I'm going to spoil it.
Oof. People aren't ready for what this book is going to have. I'm so excited. For you as the writer, what are some important themes to Superman as a character when you're writing these stories? What do you think needs to be front and center for a good Superman story?
We've been saying hope a lot because of the times we're in, and it's nice to have, me personally, it's nice to have this world to jump into. I spent now like 12 years of my life with a character whose main motivation is guilt and self-deprecation. And it's so nice to get into Superman's head, because the real magic of Superman is, the real fantasy isn't that a man can fly. The real fantasy of Superman is someone with all that power and they will look out for others. Someone with all that power and it isn't corrupting them. It's actually freed them of like the hierarchy of needs. When you see that, like they're right off the triangle. Every need has been fulfilled and they're okay with it. And they feel okay with themselves. It's such a wonderful fantasy. And that's what you're getting. We live in very dour times, where the easier fantasy is Homelander, is Omni-Man, is what if Superman went bad? It's that low-hanging fruit makes sense for the human condition, but that's not the fantasy of Superman. When I say we've all been saying hope a lot, it's a lot. For me, it's not hope, it's earnest. It's earnestness. Superman is earnest. You just have to buy that this is who he is. And it's comforting. When I walk down the street, for now like over a decade, I had a Spider-Man filter on. And I have this filter where, I'm going to write down an idea. I see something happen. I go, ooh, how would Spider-Man deal with this? How does this become a Spider-Man story? And now I'm doing it with a Superman filter, and it's so much better. And I remember the first thing, and it's why the scene is there. Even though it's an obvious scene, and there was something similar in the Christopher Reeve movie. It's why it was there in the Free Comic Book Day issue and in Unlimited #1. I remember early on when I accepted the Superman project, I was flying in a plane and the plane hit bad turbulence. And I just remembered, just like with my Superman filter on, I kind of looked out the window and I thought, if I saw just a streak of red, if I saw even like a flash of that Superman S, I would immediately calm down. I would know everything's going to work out. That's nice. It's nice to live in that world. When I got the assignment, I immediately ran out and tried to find a good Superman action figure to put on my desk, so it'd be there like watching me while I'm typing. And it was frustrating me that all the Superman action figures I could find either had a very neutral face or a scowling or angry face, like they're in mid-battle. And that's not my Superman. it took me forever to find one where there was a hint of a smile. And when you see the cover of Superman 2, that's where you have these like hands breaking into panel, these thugs from Intergang, and they've got like kryptonite knives, and one's got kryptonite brass knuckles, and Superman's beat to hell on the cover. And when Rafa was drawing that cover, I kept giving this note. He's smiling. And Rafa like doesn't no. He's smiling. I've got this. It's not a psycho Batman smile. I can do this. Even though I don't have powers, even if I don't, whatever. I got this. All right, let's do this.
That's why he's the best of them. That's like, it's just, I love the way you've explained them. Me personally, I didn't always love Superman. I was a very, not a nihilist, but like growing up, I was just a kid who like saw the negatives of everything. And a couple of years ago, it was just like I had a total flip. And my brother and I, one of the episodes, we just kind of explained Superman as he's like a white t-shirt. Like it's just good. Like, it's always going to be there. Like it's always going to be the thing that you can fall back on. Like it's always just a wholesome, it's just, and then Batman's like Jenko jeans, baggy chains, cool as heck when you were 14. Like you really want to be brooding. But when you get older, you're like, okay, there's something about a white t-shirt. Like it just is right. I just love a huge Superman guy, but you talked about flying, zipping, seeing that red. You have written long runs of some major characters we've talked about. You mentioned She-Hulk, you mentioned Spider-Man, you had a great Silver Surfer run. You've written a number of characters. What you have not written, correct me if I'm wrong, is any major characters with a cape. Superman is your first big cape character. Have you thought about the benefits of having a cape in your writing?
There's yeah, I'll admit it. I will admit this so much, and I'm not ashamed. There was a point at like that peak of Tony Robbins, like, like, oh, you can do anything. Get these tapes, listen to these tapes, and blah blah blah. And I got the tapes, and I listened to the Tony Robbins tapes. But I remember there was this one like exercise they made you do. Like when you get up tomorrow, when you jump out of bed and you're going to start your day, imagine you're wearing a cape. Just pretend when you're walking. How does that make you feel? And there is something about that. I like the way Rafa draws the cape. I like the way Bruno is drawn the cape. I like the cape that only goes down to like your thigh, because it starts catching indoors and it starts doing things and picking up lint as you walk, and where has that been? I like the idea it's just going to flap a bit, and I'm trying to remember who it was. I want to say it was a Saturday Night Live sketch, not a Second City sketch, but it was with I'm pretty sure it was when Catherine O'Hara was a guest, where she's a superhero who doesn't like the way the cape keeps snapping at her thighs when she flies. So she flies like she's walking like straight forward, so the cape goes back. And then other heroes are flying next to her going, that looks weird. Don't do that. Try it. And they all start doing it. And I have to like not think of that. I love the cape. The cape is great in that, and you can imagine that Fleischer scene when like the molten metal is coming down and he extends the cape to cover Lois. And you're like, who wouldn't want a cape? I know, it feels like that Seinfeld episode.
Yeah.
He's got a cape. They are silly. They're wonderfully silly. Why not? I mean, if you can go for the circus strongman trunks on the outside, it's not that big a leap to go to a cape.
It's not that crazy. Now, you are also walking into a character who has a fully formed, healthy relationship, and marriage. Your mentions and your DMs have probably already thanked you for that.
Yeah.
For you as a writer, how do you see Lois and Clark as characters? What interests you exploring their relationship? What about their dynamic is fun to write?
You have in Lois Lane one of the most dynamic, exciting women in the DC universe. And one of the things that can blow you away about Lois Lane is she keeps up with Superman and he's got all the powers. That it's someone who can go toe to toe with Superman. Like when you have the adventure, you could have an adventure where the two of them are in the adventure together and they can split up and you do this and I do that and you're Superman. That's what's awesome about Lois Lane. I remember I want to say it's the world's finest cartoon movie where Lois is in like a plane and it's being taken over and she knows Superman's coming. So she clips the belt buckle on her seat.
Yes.
And this guy goes, wait a minute, you're Lois Lane. Yes, I am. Like she can take this in her stride now, knowing that Superman's going to turn the plane upside down, and she just knows it's Superman. I live with this.
Just so cool.
One of the gifts we've gotten as Superman fans was the last couple seasons of the Superman and Lois show. That boy was it was good at the get-go, but those last couple seasons really nailed it. And there's a sequence in that show which is, I think, one of the best Lois Lane scenes ever acted. It's so good. If you've just been watching the movies and you avoided this, you're like, oh, I'm not going into the Arrowverse. No, this, oh my God, where the setup is it's Lois's first interview with Superman and it's live on air. And they're both sitting at a desk and then she gets called away from the desk. And one of the people she works with, like some PA, is helping her out and tells her something about Clark, like, oh, there's a phone call or a thing, you got to return Clark. And she is confiding in the PA because he's like, I think Superman was hitting on you during that interview. So, I don't know. And she confides that she's got this thing for the guy at work, Clark Kent. And you cut over to Superman with his super hearing, and he's heard this, and he is the happiest man who's ever been on the planet. That Lois Lane loves Clark Kent. It's this magical scene that if they put that in a movie, it would have been one of the best Superman scenes ever in a movie.
That's what I'm so excited for the big one coming. Because,
oh God, yeah.
Because we're gonna get more Lois, and I love that. And we talked about it last time we talked, is that one of my favorite books from you is Renew Your Vows. Like, I love you writing a family. And now you get to write not even just a full family, you get to write Ma, Pa, John, extended family. Is that something you're interested in?
The further we get, we're doing a lot of world building, the superhero side of things. In the first arc, the first 6 issues, we're also doing like a lot of done in ones. So until you get to like 5 and 6, but once the world building has been done and you know where you are with this as characters, I think you will see a lot more Superman, Lois, John, Krypto. That's the family. And will we go back to Smallville with Mom and Pa? Sure, it's Mom and Pa. But that's my core is Superman, Lois, John, and Krypto. It's a family. It's your family. You come home and hey.
That excites me.
And one of them happens to be running like this global media empire. Is the most powerful woman on the planet and the most powerful man on the planet and the son they love. And their dog. Who wouldn't want to read that?
I'm so excited.
The other thing we're trying really hard with Unlimited is if you've never read a Superman comic before, if you've never read a DC comic before, if you've never read a comic before, you can jump in at Superman Unlimited #1. Superman Unlimited #1 is it's been engineered in a lab. So that if you go out and see this new James Gunn movie and you walk out of that theater going, I love Superman, I want to start reading Superman, you can start here. And we're doing a lot of done in ones at the beginning around the time the movie comes out. So you can jump on points right at the beginning. If you love Superman and you want to experience his stories in comic book form, give it a shot, even if it's your first ever comic or your first ever Superman comic, or you're a Marvel head and the DC universe feels like too rich, like there's too much going on or too much history. You can jump in and we will hold your hand, especially with Superman Unlimited #1. This is the story of Superman. Jump in. So that's our mission statement for this. It's one of the things that also wooed me to do the jump. It was the third time DC offered me Superman, and part of the thing was they said, there's a movie coming out. How would you like to do the new book right when the movie comes out? If that said, there's also a world where you're like, I love Superman, I want to go all in. I want this big, fun super family. You can read Action Comics, which will be great jumping on point, which will be Mark Waid now we're reconnect. It's no longer like Clark running around Smallville with powers. It's Superboy. It's the early adventures, Superboy learning to fly, learning to use all the powers, what's going on, maybe not getting everything right. Superboy by Mark Waid. Talk about, built in a lab. Mark Waid was built in a lab to write this Action Comics. He gets to be off in a corner, not worrying about modern day continuity, just telling the Superboy stories he's wanted to tell. And then you'll have on Josh's side, there's a momentum in the DC universe. The All In Initiative has really grabbed everybody, and you can see it with all these DC books and the Absolute books, that there's this energy at DC. And if you're a DC fan and you're loving that energy, the Josh books are going to they're going to do what Josh has been doing great on the Superman books and continue that forward. It's Superman in the DCU, playing with all the all-in toys, moving towards Scott Snydery master plans that have you at the edge of your seat. That's what that book is for. So you've got like classic Superboy, Superman in the present, the Superman family with new jump on stories, but also doing big things with the Daily Planet, with Kryptonite, with the balance of power in the world. So like if you want like a Superman driven book, boom. And then you want Superman in the DCU with the all in momentum, that's with Josh. And between all three, you will get this big, full, rounded Superman era in your life.
That was like the ultimate pitch for DC. Sounds like they wrote that one for you. Like that was perfect.
Almost. No, but it's like, we're all working together, and that continues on to Ryan North's crypto book. And
I'm so pumped for that.
When you read the first
excited.
issue and the new Supergirl book, people are getting excited about it.
Great. Love that.
There's a lot of super momentum.
Yeah. One thing you mentioned Daily Planet is expanding, but one thing I've noticed is making a comeback, especially with DC, and you have always had this in your books, is the supporting cast. And it's been something that's been missing from major big two comics for a while, in my opinion. How important is Superman's supporting cast for you? Like Jimmy. Jimmy seems to be someone who's going to be in your book.
Jimmy's going to be in the book. Lois, I am at the right age where the books I was reading love Steve Lombard.
Yes.
He's such a dink. Yeah. And, Cat Grant's in the book, and I am making it my mission to make Ron Troop the coolest reporter at the Daily Planet. Because in my mind, here's why Ron Troop is cool. Because if you can imagine, like, there's so many Superman stories where someone bursts into the Daily Planet or somewhere where Clark Kent is. And Clark Kent is like, well, I'll stop him. And then the guy throws Clark Kent out the window. And then Superman flies in and goes, oh, don't worry about Clark. I caught him and put him back down on the ground. That happens a lot.
Yeah.
With Lois, stuff like that happens all the time. Jimmy has a signal watch, a freaking signal watch to call for help. Ron Troop has none of this. And Ron Troop gets the story anyway. He doesn't have a signal watch. Superman isn't catching him every time he falls out of a building, and he's not constantly in peril with Superman pulling some of the weight. Ron Troop is the greatest reporter at the Daily Planet, and I will win you over to that. I have a couple of goals, really stupid goals on Superman Unlimited, on top of everything. When I started working exclusively at Marvel, I remember at one point I told Tom Brevoort, I'm going to make Squirrel Girl a thing. Huh. This is my mission.
You know what?
And I got her to the point where Ryan and Erica could do magic and do all these wonderful Eisner winning things, and all on their own steam. But like, before I got near her, she'd only had the one appearance. And I just shoved, in Marvel Superheroes. She'd been mentioned in books, but as a punchline. But she'd only had one appearance. And I was going to, her one and only appearance where she...
now she's a huge thing in like the most popular video game being played right now.
I was like, I am going to put Squirrel Girl in everything I'm doing, and I'm going to make her a thing. So... that was like a mission. And now I have that mission again for two characters. I have my mission. I will get you to love Ultra the Multi-Alien. And you're like,
I don't even know who that is.
Who the F is Ultra the I love Ultra the Multi-Alien. You're Googling it right now.
I am. Whoa.
I know. He will become your favorite DC character.
What the hell? What was he even in?
He's astronaut Ace Arn, whose astropod was picked up by these 4 aliens that were planning to invade Earth. And they're 4 different aliens with 4 different power sets. And then they go through like a cosmic cloud or some shit. And he gets drawn and quartered. And every quarter of him becomes one of their alien races with their power sets. But the quarters don't work. They're one quarter is a bird leg, and one quarter is a leg made out of electricity. And I always wondered how he peed.
It's the kind of stuff that goes through my head. It's like, how does that person shower? How does a person like do the stupidest stuff?
What? I love Ultra the Multi-Alien. He's a freak.
He really, I'm just like looking at like all this art of him. He's wild.
He feels like he should be a Doom Patrol villain.
He looks like a Doom Patrol villain.
Yeah, he feels like he should be like Animal, Mineral, Vegetable Man.
Yeah, like Animal, Mineral, Vegetable Man. Huh, yeah. All right.
But no, I will get you to love Ace Arn, Ultra the Multi-Alien. And my second is Beppo the Super Monkey.
Beppo the super monkey. Okay, I knew that one. I do now.
Beppo the super monkey. But hopefully, if we're doing it right, like you'll reach an early point where you go, "Oh my God, is this the monkey from Nope?"
Oh no!
But with super Kryptonian powers.
That's terrifying.
I know.
I thought Beppo was good, wasn't he?
Yeah, but this will be new Beppo.
Oh no!
And that monkey in Nope was good. People shouldn't have done people shouldn't have done what they did to it.
Don't try to domesticate Alan.
Don't domesticate a monkey. That's mean. It's mean to the monkey.
I'm already afraid of that horse. So just another super.
It's gonna eat your face off, that monkey.
Yeah.
Now give him Kryptonian powers.
Great. Can't wait.
Yeah.
All right.
Beppo.
So my final question for you about Superman is that you are coming from having control of the best rogues gallery of all time. As you can see, for viewers who cannot see what's over my shoulder, you had control of the greatest rogues gallery ever, other than, Batman. You are now in control of Superman's.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think is special about Superman's relationship with his rogues gallery?
So that's tricky. Batman deals with people who have mentally scarred issues, and he doesn't care. He just punches them in the face, which is great.
Spider-Man bullies them.
Spider-Man bullies them the way Flash Thompson bullied him. And Barry Allen would play games with his guys to keep the stakes low.
Yeah.
Barry made it fun. Barry made it a game. Superman cares. This is the kicker. Superman loves everybody. Superman cares for everybody. Would Superman save Lex Luthor's life? Absolutely. Would Superman save General Zod's life? Absolutely. Superman cares about everybody. Superman thinks everybody has value and worth. So he's not there to belittle these guys. He's not there to can you think of a single story with the Parasite where he's not like, Rudy, I can say you?
No, I like an honest Superman story. I don't think there's ever one where he's like not going to do everything he can. Even the Man of Steel, I think he does everything that version of Superman can do to save this version of Zod.
I'm breaking up.
Yeah, you don't have to agree. But I do think Superman's always going to do what he can to save people. That's just who he is.
Mm-mm.
I'm glad you brought up Parasite. I would love to see more of him. I just think purple's good color. I think purple's a good color for little freaks.
The hardest thing about writing Superman, and it's so much harder than Spider-Man. Like with Spider-Man, I'd feel so proud of myself. I would write a story, and then whether it was Steve Wacker or Nick Lowe or Tom Brevoort, someone would come to me who goes, "No one's ever told that Spider-Man story before. How did you pull that out of your hat?" And you're like, "Oh, the character's only been around since 1962." No problem. Superman's been around since 1938. It's so hard. At one point, I was so happy. I thought I had this great idea, and I was running it by Paul Kaminsky, and he went, and he was so excited. He's like, "Yeah, I could see that. That could be a great story." I'm like, "No one's done it before." And he's like, "Oh, we just did that exact same thing last year, but I think you would have a new take on it."
Oh,
I'm like, "But you just did it last year." And he's like, "Yeah, and someone did it like 12 years before that and 30 years before that." And like, "Oh, no, I'm ripping this up. I'm throwing this out." So at some point it's like, that's the hard part, is going, this character has, crates and crates and crates of long boxes. and movies and TV shows and cartoons and radio shows and
intimidating.
Good musicals.
Yeah.
You know who Superman definitely kills? Because I was like, oh man, no, he shouldn't kill that guy. He couldn't kill that. Or there's a way out. Nick O'Teen. Look at that cartoon. He just takes Nick O'Teen and he throws him. He doesn't care.
He throws him like into space, doesn't he?
Yeah, it's like he just murdered him.
It's for the best, I think.
Those cartoons are the best.
He just goes, whoop!
Woo! I was just trying to sell kids cigarettes.
Doesn't he like crush this cigarette pack in his hand?
In his hands. With my X-ray vision, I can see the harm that
Nick O'Teen.
Nick O'Teen.
I just love Superman so much. And for your credit, I have read Superman Unlimited #1 as we're recording this. There is a moment in this. I have been reading Superman I've been reading Superman comics my whole life. He's never been my favorite character until a couple of years ago, as I said. But there is a moment in your first issue where it is a moment of realization for me of a very pinnacle point, maybe the biggest story of Superman of all time, that you give absolute brand new context in humanity. And I'm still thinking about it hours and hours and hours later. Like, it is something that I'm going to have to write deeply about because it's just so well written. And it's beautiful, but like, it's very much a statement that you were right for Superman. Like, this is you on your A game. You're going to do this well. Like, I have zero doubts.
Thank you very much.
Even if you're nervous about not being original or someone takes away your one Wile E. Coyote bit.
Well, no, I when I was working on Looney Tunes for DC, the first couple stories I did, like, might have been like 6 or 10 or 12. Like, I would not use Bugs Bunny or Daffy Duck because I'm like, I'm not ready for the show.
Yeah.
Bugs Bunny is such an iconic character, and Daffy Duck is such an iconic character. Now I'm in my 50s.
You're going right to Superman.
I'm like, Superman, and I did have that bit of fear of the legacy and the obligation, and to do the character justice. You don't want to screw it up. And I went in and I had a lot of time to prep, and I went in and I read some Elliot S. Maggin. I reread my favorite Superman stories. I read Superman stories that were classics that I had missed, that I'd overlooked. I was reading everybody who was retelling Superman's origin. How did Kurt Busiek do it? How did Jeff Johns do it? Here's how John Byrne did it, which burned into my brain. Here's, Mark Waid doing it. Here's, like, what is everyone bringing to this? More than any character in DC or Marvel, just in all of comic books, in all of superhero comics, no character has been added to more like a quilt than Superman. There are all these different parts of the legacy where different creators, different hands, different mediums come in and add to this thing, which is in this gestalt. And when you know the origins, it makes sense. I love the two things from the radio days is Up and Away. And Up and Away was so that you would know when Superman was flying on the radio. That's why they did it. That's where it comes from. The radio shows, the guy would go up and away. And now you know he's flying. That's where that expression comes.
Wow.
And so many people heard the radio show that then it gets baked into the comic. This looks like a job for Superman was the radio show, because they wanted people to know that the actor who was playing Clark Kent was also the same actor playing Superman, but he was changing his voice. So they came up with the line, "This looks like a job for Superman." That's why that line exists. And that gets put into the lexicon. That gets put every single thing, from the phone booth to the, all these different elements. They all come from different places. All these different hands built this thing. Yes, it starts with Siegel and Schuster. And yes, but like, the Fleischers thought it looked cooler if he flew instead of leaping a tall building. Everyone keeps adding and adding and adding. And then at some point it becomes Superman that we all know. It becomes this thing that we all live with. There's no other character like that in comics. You don't get that with Batman. You don't get that with Spider-Man. You don't, with all these different things. You don't get that to the extent that you get this communal dream we're all having. There's something neat about that.
Yeah, I think there's something special about Superman, and I'm thankful that you were here to talk about it. The book will be on shelves May 21st. You can find all of Dan's other work in your local comic book shop. Is there anything else people should be picking up right now that's coming out still from you?
Yeah, you should pick up an extra copy of Superman Unlimited #1 to give to somebody else.
Yes.
Much like Silver Surfer Run, working very hard to try to make this a book that you could give to your kid, you could give to your partner, that this is something where, like, if you have a friend who doesn't read comics, hopefully this is something that could be something that's so iconic and so big that this could be the gateway.
That's the hope. That's all we want to do, is help people find their in. So I'm glad you were here. You can find us at gatecrashers.fan. We'll see you again soon.
Yay! That was fun.
The Gatecrashers.